All right, let's go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Keith Wayland. I want to thank you for taking the time to join this webinar on AP automation with Kofax KTA and Infor Lawson APIA. We've actually been automating AP departments and AP solutions for over 15 years, and more recently we've had a lot of experience leveraging Infor Lawson's delivered approval module with KTA to develop cost-effective solutions for invoice data capture and routing approval. We think this is a really good combination. Two wonderful presenters for you here today, Mr. Ben Nichols, Mr. Alex Lindsey, and I'm going to hand off to them in just a second. First, I have a couple of housekeeping items. One is we will be taking questions throughout the presentation. Michael Hopkins will ask them as they come up. They love hard, challenging questions, so please lay them on us. Also, we will be recording this session. It takes us a few days to get it rendered and uploaded, but once we do, we will send you a link so that you can rewatch and share. And with that, I give you Alex and Ben.
Thank you, Keith, very much for that introduction. Like he said, we are going to talk today about AP automation with Kofax KTA, which is Kofax TotalAgility, and Infor Lawson APIA. One note of business here, we do have our team, the Content Process Automation team, is going to be doing another webinar. Ben and I are going to be talking about content management with Infor Lawson at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And there are a plethora of other Lawson webinars going on today as well, and we really encourage you to go check those out and sign up for ones that you guys may want to learn about. For the CPA team, we are actually taking a quick break in January, and we'll be back with a bunch of other content-filled webinars in February. To get us started, my name is Alex Lindsey. I'm a Senior Solution Architect with Rpi Consultants. I've been working in the Ecm, Enterprise Content Management, and AP automation space for a very long time. I like to design very weird solutions, and I'm also a whiskey distiller.
And I'm Ben Nichols. I've been working with RPI for a while now and have 4+ years experience in designing, scoping out, and creating custom solutions, accommodating for a wide variety of both best practice solutions and custom business processes. But typically I focus on the realm of AP and process automation inside of finance. So a little bit more about our agenda today. We're going to be talking a little bit about RPI first. Then we're going to chat about Kofax TotalAgility, Lawson APIA, integrated solutions, and then we'll wrap up with some summary and questions.
So a little bit about Rpi Consultants. We have 80 full-time consultants, project managers, the smartest people you can think of, all sit out there, and they're way smarter than me. I just try to keep up. And we also have offices located in Baltimore, where we are broadcasting from today, Tampa, as well as Kansas City, where Ben and I hail from. If you guys are looking for solution support with Infor Lawson in particular, but we also are partnered up with Highland for the on-base, Perceptive Software, Brainware, software sphere, as well as Kofax, and that includes like ReadSoft and things like that as well. We are also an authorized service provider and licensed reseller for Kofax products. Like I mentioned, that's KTA, which we'll talk about today a little bit more in depth, KTM, Kofax Capture, Kapow, as well as ReadSoft, which I'm kind of a big fan of as well. If you guys are looking for health checks, implementations, or just a quick chat about any of these, we'd be happy to help you out.
Next up, we're also a certified Infor Lawson Alliance partner. We specialize in industries that include healthcare, public sector, commercial business, as well as a wide variety of additional industries. A lot of our solution expertise focuses on the financials realm, which includes AP and financial process automation. We also have great expertise inside of human resources, supply chain management, version 11 cloud suite. We know a lot of customers that's a prospect in their future, so we definitely have some experience in that realm. We also have knowledge within payroll and technical services with Infor products.
All right, so kind of jumping into it, how can we automate your invoice processing if you're an Infor customer? One of the big ways we'd like to do this, and one of the things that our team does really well, is introducing some OCR technology. And this is where Kofax TotalAgility comes into play. First off, Kofax TotalAgility it's really at its core, it's a very robust and powerful workflow engine. Within that, you have the ability to do data extraction, so intelligent content and data capture. That means that we can pull details and values off of your electronic documents or scanned documents. It's also a great tool for managing sometimes approvals, but case management for insurance claims and things like that, buyer reviews, packing slip extraction as well for PO documents and things like that. And then AP and IP agility for Kofax KTA is what we'll really be focusing on today, and that has to do with your invoice processing and data capture from there. So what is the AP IP agility? It's invoice processing, accounts payable processing. Essentially, we streamline capture. So if you have documents, your invoice documents, you probably have a multiple ways that those are coming in. That could be EDI sometimes, but most of the time it's going to be paper or email. There may, again, be like a vendor portal that you have to download it from. Either way, we'd like to streamline the capture of your invoice documents into Kofax itself, into KTA. So we would basically, a lot of times, if you don't have a front-end OCR, we'd like to encourage our clients to streamline that. So work with your suppliers to basically say, please just send your invoices to this email address or to this location. That way you can streamline that in. After you capture your invoice documents, again, this is something that we'd like to automate so no one really has to touch it yet. It goes into the extraction process. At this point, KTA is built to basically read through all of your invoice documents. So all the invoices that come in, it's going to try to pull values off of that and validate that against your ERP, against Infor Lawson. If for some reason it has to stop, if it's not confident in certain things, there'll be a user verification, which I'll talk about as well. And then after that, that data that we've extracted, along with the document itself, gets exported over to APIA for further handling. So what does the data extraction and validation kind of look like? Essentially, we're pulling invoice header and line details. So if you have non-PO invoices, we're going to get that header information. And what that kind of looks like from a technical, slightly technical standpoint is that it's going to look for invoice number, invoice date, invoice amount. It can pull any value that's on the document itself. You can basically train KTA to pull that information. It's also going to try to find your supplier information. If you have a PO on the invoice, for instance, that's typically tied to your vendor information, your supplier information, so we can logically make that assumption and make that connection with the data itself. If it's not, if you don't have a purchase order number on your invoice document, we can look at the address and match that up against your supplier master within Infor as well. At that point, it's doing all this on the back end. Your users aren't doing anything yet. It's pulling these values and it's making logical conclusions as to what this information is based on where it is on the document and where it needs to go into APIA. Like I mentioned, if it does need to stop for any reason, that's typically, it could be a number of different reasons. It could be image quality. So if the image itself is garbage, or if it's a yellow piece of paper or something like that, that sometimes happens and it could require user intervention. There is a nice web-based user interface for these people to do that. So basically your AP clerks or your AP analysts will go in and select values that need to be corrected. Other instances could be if the vendor is not set up yet, if the purchase order, you can have validations in place to stop it if there's not enough money on the purchase order, so it actually can't be posted yet anyway. These are the type of validations that can be set up within KTA to stop it before it gets any further in the process, before you actually get to APIA and do the posting. You can see here we've got a number of different fields. So this is a nice little screenshot of what KTA IP agility looks like. Again, you've got your image here and you've got these kind of indications that, hey, I need to update this value, I need to update this value. And within this as well, you can actually do dynamic searches within Infor. So we basically get master data from Infor into KTA so that when you need to make a reference or you need to make an adjustment to process this invoice forward, you know that it's coming from your source of truth. And again, those lookups can be, with an API, it can be an ODBC connection to connect directly to a database, or it can be just static data. If you have some one-off items that's specific to your instance of Infor and you just want to have that included to maybe make some routing or logic decisions downstream, you can do that as well. And after that, it's then exported over to APIA, where you're going to be handling a lot of your GL coding and approvals. And Ben's really going to be talking about that. The way we do that, by the way, is typically through Yoga Connect. That is our ingrown or our in-house tool that we've built to basically handle web service calls in between Infor Lawson and other systems.
All right, so we're going to switch over now and talk about where that data goes after it's been exported. So we'll be chatting about Infor Lawson Accounts Payable Invoice Automation, which is what we refer to as APIA. And so what APIA is a landmark-based application within the Lawson platform, and what its primary goal is to pull in both the ability to enter invoices, validate that the information is there that you need for approvals, and do some data verification, and then it's ultimately an approval matrix management system. So it houses your approval matrix and the routing rules associated with getting an invoice out to the correct approvers. It also has the ability to do automation for those approvals, and so it can auto-assign the approval routes and then also auto-approve certain invoices. For example, like a PO, you've already got an approval, we don't need to go through another approval process for that. So we can switch over. So why APIA? So the selling point with APIA really is the fact that it is a direct invoice processing system inside of the Lawson platform. So no longer are you reliant entirely on a third-party application to get invoices entered, processed, and sent out for approvals. The other great benefit about it is the fact that it has direct access and real-time access to Lawson's financial data. So for example, in a drop-down on an invoice entry screen for company, you are pulling straight from the Lawson financial data tables, or for your vendor, you're pulling directly from the vendor records. So there is no lag time, there's no outdated data in there. It's all real time to what's in your Lawson financial system. Additionally, so it simplifies your upgrade and your maintenance. Specifically, APIA began with inside of version 9 and version 10. It is also available with inside of version 11. It changes a little bit in naming and becomes AP Automation. But all of the same business classes in version 9 and version 10 are the exact same business classes that are in version 11. So that upgrade path and that maintenance path long term is very accessible and a lot more reasonable than full re-implementations or full reconfigurations. Additionally, because the way of APIA is set up and the way third-party applications have kind of filled in the gaps over the years without this direct integration to Lawson, it now helps minimize the third-party application footprint and additionally support and sometimes licensing costs. It's very dependent on each business's solution and their setup currently, but it does have the ability to minimize that cost. So real quick, we're going to take a look at a kind of out-of-the-box process flow. We'll start up top here, which is our Ecm and OCR solution. So in this instance, we're talking about Kofax TotalAgility, and that is actually going to be our OCR aspect of it. You typically have some kind of ECM bolted up to store your documents. But we'll go ahead and look at capturing the invoice, getting the basic header level and detail level information from OCR, KTA in this example. And then we'll be passing it through web services to create that invoice inside of APIA. And that's where our Yoga Connect connector, our in-house software, actually helps assist in getting that data over to Infor Lawson. We then collect any remaining data necessary in order to send the invoice for approvals. We check for required data, we send it through the approval process, and it references all the configurations of your approval matrix and who and what should route where. At that point, we've sent it out. We either get an approval or a rejection on the invoice. If approved, we jump down to the next swim lane. If rejected, we actually have some additional processes for our AP invoice processors, so they can handle and review the invoice and get it ready to go back out for approval and complete the invoice lifecycle. But once we have a fully approved invoice, we then are sent over to the ERP. So this would be Lawson Financials, and these two exist with inside of the same platform. So this is a Lawson environment, and this is where we interface the rest of the data in for the remainder of your processes, whether that's check processing, month-end closing, reporting, things like that. It still goes back into your core Lawson financial applications and processes, and APIA exists just to structure and handle the approval process. So availability, as we discussed, APIA is available with inside of Lawson version 9 and version 10. And then API automation, which is the same kind of platform, same technology, is available with inside of version 11. So we've had a lot of customers lately talking about version 11. There's a lot of excitement about it and a lot of questions concerning what that migration and upgrade path looks like. But it's, again, built on the same business classes, has a very similar look and feel, which we'll take a look at here in a second. And then we've got a very similar core status, which inside of APIA and API automation, we use statuses to define where the invoice is inside of the lifecycle. So what we'll see here is an image and an example of API automation inside of version 11. So just to pique curiosity, this is what it's going to look like in the future for API automation. And you can see the statuses I was referencing. So we can look at the status of an invoice from an unassigned state to an unsubmitted, pending approval, approved unreleased, and several other categories. And this helps the processors and those inside of Lawson to actually see where the invoice is at. And additionally, there are ways, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the afternoon, where you can see how your approvers can see the invoice through the life cycle and what status it's in.
All right, so shifting gears a little bit to more the integrated solutions and how you can complete the invoice document lifecycle by incorporating kind of an ECM storage capability. So ECM, we talk about it a lot on the CPA side, but how can you kind of integrate that within this kind of solution that we're kind of showing here? So essentially, you do have a lot of the end-to-end AP, IP automation. So you've got your invoice capture. So the point that you receive the actual document itself, it goes through the extraction process here, where we're actually pulling data and we're validating that information against Infor Lawson. It then moves into your invoice approval routing and GL coding, and that's going to happen within APIA. And at that point, once it's done with APIA, again, it's really nice that it's seamless, so there's no extra handoff. It just exists within Infor. Your invoice gets posted, your data gets posted, and then your payment processing happens on the back end. So what does that mean in terms of like an integrated solution with an ECM? At that point, that document, we can do whatever we need to do with it. So you get the document within KTA, you can archive it early to an on-base or an ECM. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our next webinar. Infor has an option as well for document storage. And there's a plethora of others. Main point being that we can basically get that document to wherever it needs to go. One thing that we do a lot with a lot of our AP automation solutions as well, so you have clear line of sight with your documents. You can embed links within Lawson to basically have links to those documents themselves. And we also like to update that document metadata with payment information. So if you're in Accounts Payable, you probably get a lot of questions about, hey, where's my check? Where's my money? This allows your users to actually go in and find the document itself and see when it was paid, the check number, the check amount, when it was sent. Anything you want to store on that document in ECM, you can do that as well. So a few other additional products integrations, like I mentioned, we've got OnBase and Perceptive Content by Highland. Those are the ones that we most frequently work with in the ECM space. If you're looking to expand some of the ECM pieces as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, we've got other in-house products that we've built. Yoga Docs and Dashboard is great for actually viewing documents from an HTML5 browser, so tablets, smartphones, any web browser really, and there's a dashboard along with that as well to actually provide reporting capabilities if you want. That could be accrual reports. It just gives a really nice interface for your users to view documents and understand the data. Yoga Capture, if you want to capture directly to an ECM, Yoga Capture is a tool that we've built as well for email capture, scanning, importing, things like that. Yoga SMS, so we talk about approvals a little bit. Yoga SMS can actually be integrated with the APIA. That essentially means that as part of your approval process, if you've got C-level people that need to, so your execs and VPs and things like that, that need to approve invoices, but they aren't necessarily in the system all the time, Yoga SMS can be used to actually text them a copy of the document with instructions, say, hey, approve or reject this invoice. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, Yoga Connect for Lawson to handle that API, those web service calls between the systems. In summary, I hope that gives you guys a great idea of how you can leverage your existing Infor Lawson to basically bolster up your financials. Front end with KTA to OCR and get the data out of there. Push it over to APIA so you can get the approvals. And really what that allows you to do is reduce that manual key entry that your users may be doing right now. Thank you guys very much, and we'll open it up for questions now.
Yeah.
All right, guys. First question. Sorry, excuse me. Do I have to use these solutions together, or can I use them separately?
No, you do not have to use them together. So if you want, you could do just APIA. Yep. If you've got a good process in place to get your documents in to APIA, then you could just do that. It's not a one or the other kind of thing. You could definitely do your coding and approvals with an APIA. We have plenty of clients that are doing that as well. On the other end, if you're a client and really it comes down to that manual data entry that's really killing the productivity, you can just front end with KTA and just OCR and extract invoice data, have them simply just verify information, and then have that actually be pushed directly into your Infor financials instead of going through APIA as well.
Yep.
If I have Lawson, how long does it take to implement APIA or Kofax?
So typically from an APIA standpoint, it's around the 3 to 4 month timeline. It's very dependent on how engaged we are, basically how engaged our customer is with us and how proactive we are in the timeline and how aggressive we are. But you can sometimes see that range down to a 2 month time frame depending on the solution. But it's just kind of a good base to start with, a 3 to 4 month expectation.
KTA pretty much mirrors that as well. There's a little bit more data handoff and integration with KTA because we need to get that data from Infor into the system itself, but it's about the same. If you were to do these together, those would run in tandem essentially. Ben and I are working on a similar project together right now where he's handling the APIA and I'm handling the front end OCR pieces.
Yep.
All right, sorry. I think that's all the questions we got. I want to thank Mr. Ben Nichols, Mr. Alex Lindsey for this presentation, all of you for attending, and I want to point out that they will be back here in approximately an hour and a half talking about content management with Lawson. So if you enjoyed that, hopefully join us then, and I've been promised that we will hear about Alex's latest week varietals, so please do join us then.
Thank you.
Thank you.